two sets of dinosaur fossils from the Jurassic period have been discovered in southwest China's Yunnan province.
It's been hailed as one of the century's most important archaeological finds, the body of a Bronze Age mountaineer, which scientists believe could be 4,000 years old.
What if some of the most mind-blowing discoveries ever made were never announced, never taught in schools, and never given a place in history because someone, somewhere, decided the world wasn't ready? Over the last 100 years, scientists and explorers have uncovered things that made no sense. Things that shattered what we thought we knew about science, history, and even reality itself. But instead of changing the world, these discoveries were quietly buried. From mysterious artifacts to scientific accidents with world-altering implications, the deeper we go, the stranger it gets. We are revealing 15 discoveries that were immediately covered up, and trust us, some of these are wild. Number 15, the hidden tomb beneath the Sphinx. No one knows what the ancient Egyptians themselves called the Sphinx. Sphinx comes from a Greek mythological creature and only entered our vocabulary around 2,000 years after the statue rose. That mystery, its true name, sets the stage for a deeper secret.
I think you can argue that the Sphinx is the most recognizable statue anywhere in the world.
Beneath those weathered paws could lie an unexcavated chamber full of untold treasures. In the 1990s, John Anthony West and geophysicist Thomas Dobecki turned ground-penetrating radar on the Sphinx's front limbs. They uncovered perfectly straight, rectangular voids carved into the bedrock. Clear signs of man-made rooms rather than random fissures.
It doesn't seem to have performed the same function at all.
When these startling results went public at a 1993 NBC special hosted by Charlton Heston, Egypt's chief antiquities official, Zahi Hawass, dismissed them as natural cracks and forbade any drilling or remote inspections. Legends of a Hall of Records under Giza aren't new. 5th century BCE writer Herodotus described vast underground passageways beneath the pyramids.
Egypt's famous pyramids. New discovery is shedding light on a mystery that dates back millennia, many millennia.
15th century Arab historians told of secret libraries buried to preserve pre-dynastic wisdom from global cataclysms. Yet every request for excavation permits has been stonewalled. Even a hushed 2006 radar survey, approved by Egypt's government, remains classified. Foreign scientists who asked to see the scans were rebuffed. Why the cover-up? Some chalk it up to academic inertia. Admitting an older chamber would force historians to rethink the Sphinx's construction date.
Archaeologists and Egyptologists like myself believe that the Sphinx was sculpted around 2500 BC.
Others point to politics and religion, fear that proof of pre-Egyptian civilizations could clash with national narratives or faith groups. Rumors persist that a small, early dig uncovered odd artifacts, then quietly sealed them. Imagine clay tablets older than any known hieroglyphs or scrolls revealing lost engineering marvels. Instead, the world's oldest stone guardian stands atop its own secret, guarded not by sand, but by a conscious decision to leave it unexplored. The Sphinx still watches over Giza, its true name and its hidden tomb waiting for permission to be unearthed. Number 14, the Vela Incident. On September 22, 1979, a U.S. Vela satellite picked up a classic double flash over the South Atlantic, an unmistakable signature of a nuclear blast. These satellites had caught other nuclear tests before, but this one was special. It happened near the Prince Edward Islands, a remote stretch of ocean far from prying eyes.
Tonight, it appears another nation has joined the nuclear club and has actually exploded a nuclear device.
Almost immediately, U.S. intelligence pointed toward a secret test likely run by Israel with help from apartheid South Africa. Both nations had a motive. Israel wanted to maintain its policy of nuclear ambiguity, and South Africa needed proof of capability to strengthen its global standing. Despite clear satellite data, the Carter administration decided not to call it out. Instead, they set up the Rowney Panel, a scientific review that concluded the flash could be a satellite glitch or even a meteoroid strike, an explanation most weapons experts found dubious.
There was a large influx of energy somewhere over South Africa at about the time the Vela satellite saw its flash.
Behind the scenes, CIA memos and decrypts hinted strongly at collaboration between Israel and South Africa. Yet publicly, the U.S. dignified the panel's findings, and the incident slipped from mainstream view. Over the decades, former South African officials and newly declassified documents have painted a different picture. A retired naval officer acknowledged preparations for an underwater nuclear detonation, and apartheid-era records reveal talks with Israel about sharing uranium and technical know-how. Israel's Dimona reactor, already suspected of producing weapons-grade material, likely provided the test device, while South Africa supplied remote waters to keep local and global watchdogs off balance.
Israel now has as many as 200 nuclear weapons. The Israelis have indeed been cooperating with South Africa.
Today, the Vela incident sits in the shadows of Cold War lore. Official reports label it a satellite anomaly, but for historians and non-proliferation experts, it stands as a textbook case of a cover-up. Governments chose political convenience over transparency, trading public outrage for strategic alliances. And somewhere, deep beneath the waves, the echoes of that secret blast linger, testimony to how easily big discoveries can vanish when power calls the shots. Number 13, the Mayak cover-up. In the high-stakes race of the Cold War, Stalin's push to beat the United States at atom-making led to the hasty construction of the Mayak plant in the southern Ural Mountains. Officially hidden behind barbed wire and military checkpoints, the facility churned out plutonium by the ton and poured its radioactive leftovers into nearby rivers and underground ditches.
The Soviets pumped waste directly into the river for many years, and entire tracts of land were contaminated.
Villagers drank the poisoned water, their fields and livestock tainted, long before anyone grasped the danger. Then on a quiet September morning in 1957, disaster struck. A cooling tank filled with concentrated nuclear waste overheated. Without proper safety valves or warning systems, the liquid dried into a crust, built up intense pressure, and finally exploded with the force of a small hydrogen bomb. A dense, orange-brown cloud of radiation drifted across hundreds of square miles. Farms, villages, forests, and lakes were instantly laced with deadly isotopes. Estimates suggest 500,000 people felt the fallout sting, even though Soviet authorities never admitted what truly happened.
They're contaminated enough here. She wonders why they're still being so mistreated. They're like guinea pigs.
Instead of help, survivors got vague orders. Evacuate now. There's an illness outbreak. Homes were sealed, names erased from official registries, and entire communities vanished from maps. For decades, the world only knew of Mayak through whispers among scientists and scant data smuggled out by dissidents. Meanwhile, the plant carried on, still Russia's top nuclear site, and the true scale of sickness and genetic damage remained buried. It wasn't until Glasnost that the tale finally saw daylight, shocking a world primed to fear Chernobyl, yet unaware that Mayak's secret blast had been far worse. Today, silent hills and overgrown villages stand as tombstones to a cover-up that barred sunlight for 40 years, and counting. Number 12, the Kecksburg UFO incident. On a winter evening in December 1965, a blazing fireball tore through the night sky over southern Ontario and the northeastern United States. Its trail glowed bright enough to be seen for hundreds of miles.
The wife and I seen the streak in the sky and heard it on the radio.
In rural Pennsylvania, near the tiny village of Kecksburg, families stepped outside to watch the strange light disappear behind the trees. And moments later, a thunderous roar echoed through the valley. Local boys pedaled their bikes toward the woods, curiosity pushing them forward even as their hearts pounded with a mix of awe and dread. They found a wooded ravine still smoldering, though smoke curls had already faded into the chill. At first glance, the object looked like a giant acorn, its smooth, coppery shell half buried in the frozen ground. No wings, no engines, just odd carvings across its surface.
And to me, the object looked exactly like a fresh acorn that you pick off of a tree.
Military vehicles soon choked the narrow roads. Olive green jeeps, flatbeds, soldiers in gray-green suits. Flashing blue lights danced in the trees as search teams scoured the forest floor. Officers quietly ordered firemen and onlookers to clear the area, sealing roads and hushed whispers in farmhouse kitchens. Within hours, the object and any evidence of it vanished. A large flatbed truck carried away a covered shape, leaving behind only frozen footprints and unanswered questions. Nearby residents reported strange pairs of boots on their lawns, unmarked helicopters floating overhead, and a hush that fell across Kecksburg like a lid. Over the decades, memoirs surfaced of hieroglyph-like symbols etched into the object's bumper, of moon-suited figures hauling away a mysterious crate, and of official files forever sealed from public view. Today, the Kecksburg incident remains a shadowy chapter in UFO lore, proof that sometimes what falls from the sky is meant to stay hidden. Number 11. The Hidden Script of Glozell. In the spring of 1924, a teenager plowing his family's field in rural central France noticed his horse stumble into a shallow pit. When he and his grandfather knelt to clear debris, they discovered a hidden chamber filled with broken pottery, carved bones, and dozens of clay tablets inscribed with strange symbols. Word spread quickly to nearby scholars, and almost as quickly, a storm of suspicion erupted across Europe. Initial digs turned up engraved stones and small statuettes, as well as fragments bearing what looked like alphabetic characters, pictograms, and runs of tiny dots. Some experts whispered that the mix of styles, from Neolithic spirals to medieval script, was impossible, a clever forgery designed to trick the learned professors of Paris. Instead of open-minded study, the site became a battleground. Artifacts were seized, scholars hurled accusations of fraud, and the young discoverer faced a court trial for forgery. Although courts eventually cleared the family, most archaeologists had already turned away, embarrassed by what they called a hoax. Decades passed before modern dating tools returned to Glozell. Thermoluminescence and carbon tests placed many artifacts between 500 BCE and the early Middle Ages, confirming that the site had seen human hands for thousands of years. Yet the damage was done. Official registers ignored the site. University lectures omitted its story, and most tablets ended up locked away in private collections. What could have rewritten chapters of European prehistory instead slipped into obscurity. Number 10. The Dyatlov Pass. In the bitter chill of February 1959, 9 seasoned hikers set off into Russia's Ural Mountains, eager to tackle the remote Dyatlov Pass. Each carried heavy gear, warm clothes, and dreams of untouched snow. Yet none returned as planned.
They were hiking into the Ural Mountains to take this thing called their Level 3 hiking test, which sounds really lame.
When rescuers finally reached their camp weeks later, they found the tent shredded from the inside, its occupants gone without a fight. Bodies lay scattered across the ice, some dressed in light shirts and socks despite temperatures plunging below -30 degrees Celsius. One hiker's ribs were crushed as if under immense force. Another's skull bore a deep, unexplained fracture. No tracks dotted the snow around the site, no hint of animal prowlers or an avalanche's rubble, only footprints of the hikers leading away into the dark. The Soviet investigation closed fast, blaming a powerful natural force, then promptly locked the files. Rumors swirled of odd lights dancing in the sky that night, and whispers of secret weapons tests run by the nearby military. The KGB watched every step of any inquiry, snatching photos and logs, leaving families in the shadows. After the Soviet Union's fall, hopes rose for clarity. Yet vital documents remained missing, and new studies point out that an avalanche theory didn't match the lack of debris or slope angles.
And so these 9 hikers were the best.
In 2019, officials revisited the case, again naming an avalanche the accepted scapegoat. Experts balked, noting the tissue damage looked more like a heavy blow than snow pressure. Today, Dyatlov Pass endures as a cold puzzle, its true cause buried by secrecy and fear. Whether triggered by a hidden test, an otherworldly flare, or some freak of nature, those final footprints vanish into silence, leaving only unanswered questions. Number 9. Qumran's Cheat Sheet. In 1952, deep in a windswept Judean desert cave, archaeologists brushing sand from an ancient pot nearly missed a rolled strip of bronze.
Deep in the Judean desert, close to the Dead Sea, are caves once used by 2nd century Jewish rebels.
Unlike its fragile parchment companions found nearby, this copper scroll survived the millennia, albeit as a rusted coil. When carefully unrolled, its etched lines didn't whisper prophecies or pray for deliverance. Instead, it laid out the world's oldest treasure map. Divided into cryptic entries, the scroll lists 64 hiding spots scattered across hills, cisterns, and fortified enclosures around Jerusalem. It names vaults where tons of gold, silver, and gilded artifacts, perhaps relics lifted from the Second Temple, lay buried in secret shafts and behind sealed walls. Every direction is practical. Dig 9 cubits here, pry up a rock slab there. The terrain matches known ruins, ancient aqueduct beds in time-worn valleys, lending eerie credibility to the scheme.
But hidden with them were biblical treasures, the like of which Israel has not seen in over half a century.
Still, almost from day one, scholars balked. Some dismissed it as a symbolic ruse. Others feared stirring political unrest by publicizing hidden temple wealth. In the 1960s, one determined explorer scouted valley by valley, only to be stymied by bureaucratic red tape and shifting permits. Generations of treasure hunters have since haunted desert camps, scanning satellite imagery, but nothing definitive has surfaced. Meanwhile, the scroll itself sits secure in a museum vault, its secrets intact. The Copper Scroll remains an outlier among its biblical peers. No psalms, no prophecies, only a ledger for a vanished fortune. Its hush isn't due to a lack of intrigue. Officials in Jerusalem reportedly weigh the fallout of unearthing massive temple treasures, claims, religious fervor, diplomatic tangles. For now, the desert wind is the only thief, and the buried hoard sleeps on, waiting for someone bold enough or reckless enough to follow the map into history's greatest cover-up. Number 8, the famous WOW signal. Just after dinner on August 15, 1977, a lonely radio telescope nestled in Ohio's flat fields picked up something strange. For 72 seconds, a sharp burst of energy blipped at 1,420 megahertz, the so-called hydrogen line that any civilization eavesdropping on the cosmos would know to use. Volunteer astronomer Jerry Eamon saw the printout, circled the odd sequence in red, and scribbled "WOW," and the legend was born.
That moment in scientific history has become so well known that the sound he charted is now known as the WOW signal.
That signal wasn't a drifting pulsar, a satellite, or any known earthly chatter. It came from the direction of Sagittarius, flared up fast, peaked, then faded away, just like a steady spinning beacon would. After that blink, however, the universe went quiet again. Telescope teams pointed dishes at the same patch of sky for years, but never caught a second wave. Here's where it gets odd. Despite the potential first peek at alien talk, no big agency ever launched a full-blown hunt. Funding for extraterrestrial research was already scarce, and openly chasing this signal risked ridicule. SETI programs fought for every grant, and scientists quietly feared being branded starry-eyed dreamers. Government labs tracked sunspots and spy satellites, but said nothing about this pulse from deep space. When Big Ear finally fell in the 1990s, it made way for campus expansion, and no powerful array ever rescanned those exact coordinates. Later theories tried to pin the event on a passing comet's hydrogen coma, but they couldn't fully explain the narrow bandwidth and sudden spike. Maybe it was natural, maybe not. What's certain is that a momentous clue vanished into bureaucratic shadow. The 1977 WOW signal stands as one of science's greatest what-ifs, an unexplained whisper in the cosmic static, shelved by caution, funding fears, and the dread of academic shame. Whether it was a cosmic hello or a fluke, the mystery endures, haunting every new search for life beyond Earth. Number 7. The buried city of Caral. In the dry coastal plains north of Lima lies a stretch of dusty fields where, in the late 1990s, archaeologists uncovered something that rewrote history.
And the archaeological site of Caral definitely seems to possess a power to draw you in deeper.
Beneath wind-scoured sand sat stone pyramids, open plazas, and sunken amphitheaters belonging to Caral, a city dating back to around 2600 BCE. That makes it older than Egypt's Great Pyramid, predating any Inca capital by some 4,000 years. Yet instead of headlines, the find met silence. Leading universities and museums hesitated to embrace Caral's challenge to the long-held belief that advanced cities only sprouted in the Old World. Papers faced rejection, grant applications dried up, and the project's chief archaeologist suddenly found himself without funds. Even UNESCO held off until 2009 to declare Caral a World Heritage Site. Behind closed doors, whispers blame more than academic stubbornness. Cold War rivalries had cemented views of the Americas as backwaters compared to Europe and Asia. Giving Caral center stage threatened narratives of Western dominance. A Bronze Age city rising out of nowhere, complete with irrigation canals and Quipa-like recording tools? Too inconvenient for some. For years, the pyramids of Caral, or Caral, as early reports misnamed it, lay largely hidden, known only to a handful of specialists. Only when local communities and independent teams pushed for preservation did the world finally take notice. Today, visitors walk gravel paths past monumental staircases, imagining the drum beats that once echoed in those plazas. Now it's time for today's subscriber pick. Deep in the heart of a forgotten forest, two explorers named Mei Ling and Hao hacked through mossy vines to reveal stone walls. Legend spoke of a city swallowed by trees, where time paused at its final breath. On that morning, birds fell silent and sunlight sank through emerald leaves like whispered secrets. Mei Ling brushed moss from an arch carved with symbols no scholar could read. Hao unearthed a sealed box filled with metal maps depicting technologies centuries ahead. They recorded every detail in a bound journal, knowing the world would tremble at their find. Their hearts pounded. This entry appeared under a heading, Discoveries, that were immediately covered up, a warning scrawled in ink. Before the explorers could share their proof, the ground rumbled, vines snapped back into place, and every trace vanished as if swallowed by Earth itself. Later, distant archives listed only a cryptic note about a missing research team. No photographs or official reports escaped censorship. Now, decades have passed, and only that journal remains. Could anyone pierce the forest's silence and lift the cover-up? Number 6. The Green Run. Late on December 23, 1949, something strange drifted over eastern Washington. Officials at the Hanford plutonium plant flipped switches and sent a cloud of radioactive gases into the air. They called it the Green Run, a code name for an experiment no one outside a handful of military and lab officers knew about. The aim was simple on paper: test U.S. Air Force detection gear by simulating a Soviet release. In reality, filters meant to trap iodine-131 were turned off, and 5,500 to 12,000 curies of that isotope poured into the sky, along with even more xenon-133. Over the next hours, winds carried these invisible particles across towns and farms. People downwind unknowingly breathed in tiny bits of radioactive iodine, which then settled in milk and crops. Local doctors saw odd spikes in thyroid issues years later, though at the time no warning bells rang in public bulletins. The tiny detectors carried by Air Force planes did their job. They pinpointed the drifting plume. Back at Hanford, engineers patted themselves on the back and logged the data. Behind closed doors, however, worries flickered. Lab reports noted troubling blips on health monitors. Internal memos hinted at unease over long-term fallout. Yet the government kept the full story under wraps. No newspapers ran front-page alerts. No town meetings took place. Radiation releases, once paused after Green Run, resumed in the early 1960s under fresh tests, each cloaked in secrecy. Decades later, Freedom of Information Act requests pulled back the curtain. Number 5. The Forbidden Coastline. In 1929, dusty walls of Istanbul's Topkapı Fortress sheltered a secret scholar's find, a weathered parchment dated 1513, credited to Ottoman Admiral Piri Reis. At first glance, its sweep of Europe, Africa, and the western shores of South America seemed plausible. Then came the shock. The northern edge of Antarctica lay bare.
A, that there are pyramids on Antarctica, and B, the famous Piri Reis map, which apparently shows the coastline of the continent.
No ice, and drawn with uncanny precision. How could sailors chart a landlocked under miles of ice until the 19th century? According to the Admiral's notes, maps from ancient mariners, some claim to pre-Alexander the Great, fed into his chart. Modern scholars scratch their heads. Longitude lines on the parchment aligned far too accurately for any navigator before chronometers existed. In 1960, a U.S. Air Force study found that the Antarctic outline matched the continent's true underwater coasts, as revealed by seismic surveys in the 20th century. At first, academics hailed it as a window to a lost seafaring culture, but the excitement didn't last. University committees downgraded the parchment to mere curiosity or sloppy copying. Critics pointed to distortions in South America's bulge, calling the map more art than evidence. Yet its correct depiction of latitude, coast angles, and tiny inlets still defy easy dismissal. Today, the Piri Reis map sits behind glass, its silent lines mocking mainstream timelines.
Based on the analysis of ancient maps, including the Piri Reis map.
No grand cover-up memos have surfaced, but scholars suspect a quiet refusal to rewrite textbooks. After all, accepting the map's truth would mean acknowledging vanished civilizations with ocean-crossing skills centuries ahead of recorded history. Sometimes the hardest discoveries to swallow are the ones that refuse to fit the official story. Number 4. Passport to Oblivion. It was a sweltering July day in 1954 when a sharply dressed man stepped off a Pan Am flight at Tokyo's Haneda Airport, bearing a passport from a country nobody had ever heard of. The travel document looked as official as any, complete with embossed seals and visa stamps from France, Italy, and even Japan itself. He spoke flawless French and Japanese, carried expensive cufflinks, and wore a wristwatch that ticked steadily. Yet every official he met hit dead ends. The company he claimed to work for existed, but none of its staff had heard of him. The bank on his forms was real, but no account matched his name. When asked to point out his homeland on a map, he tapped Andorra and insisted this tiny principality had been known for centuries as Taured. Officers first chalked it up to a forgery or an elaborate prank, but as they cross-checked serial numbers on his passport, customs specialists, trained to spot fakes, found each detail lining up with genuine printing techniques of the day. The sleeper agent theory briefly took hold. Perhaps foreign spies had gone to great lengths to fabricate a new nationality. By midnight, he was lodged in a guarded hotel room for further questioning. The next morning, the guards swore the windows were locked and the only key was in their pocket. Yet the man had vanished. His passport, suitcase, and tailored suit disappeared without a trace. Local police conducted door-to-door searches, the airline scoured passenger lists, and diplomats quietly huddled behind closed doors. Still, no clues turned up. Over the decades, the Taured man has become a staple of paranormal lore, an interdimensional traveler or a victim of an elaborate cover-up by governments unwilling to admit the impossible. Whatever the truth, the man's disappearance remains baffling. The incident never made official reports public, airport logs stayed sealed, and the case file was quietly dropped. In the end, all that remains is the story of a man who arrived from nowhere and then evaporated without a trace. Number 3, the temple buried in time. In the dusty hills of southeastern Turkey, there once stood what locals called the Hill of the Old Stones. Nobody suspected that beneath this innocent mound lay a world-shattering secret, until a chance discovery in 1994 revealed massive stone rings, each pillar carved with lifelike boars, snakes, and foxes. Radiocarbon tests would later date these megaliths back to 9600 BCE, some 11,000 years ago, long before wheat fields or settled villages. Archaeologist Klaus Schmidt peeled back layer after layer of earth to expose circular enclosures ringed by T-shaped pillars.
Now, all of these 4 main enclosures have a couple things in common. Every single one of them has 2 large T-shaped pillars that sit in the middle and face one another.
Some weighing a staggering 20 tons. Each pillar bore reliefs of fierce creatures, hinting at ritual dramas now lost to time. Even more mystifying, smaller stones appeared deliberately buried beneath new walls, as if ancient hands had wanted to hide the very proof of their achievement. The revelation tore up the textbook timeline. Until then, scholars believed agriculture sparked a complex society. Göbekli Tepe insisted ritual gathering and symbolic art might have come first, then spurred the sowing of fields.
It is the oldest section of Göbekli Tepe dating back nearly 12,000 years.
Yet the academic world greeted this bombshell with cold shoulders. Limited grants, scarce excavation permissions, and years of textbook inertia meant the site lingered in scholarly limbo well into the 2000s. UNESCO recognition only arrived in 2018, decades after the first dig. Today, just a fraction, under 10%, of the site has been unearthed. New digs nearby at Karahoyuk suggest Göbekli Tepe was not a lone marvel, but one of many hubs in a hidden culture of hunter-gatherers turned master stonemasons. Each year, researchers pry deeper, uncovering tangled walls and more buried rings. The real twist is how this discovery was nearly erased by disbelief. No cloak and dagger cover-up, just the slow drift of funds, editorial snubs, and university curricula that refused to change. But those T-shaped guardians, carved long before history began, have the last word. Sometimes the greatest discoveries are those we choose to ignore. Number 2, Siberia's secret blast. On the morning of June 30th, 1908, a silent sky over Siberia ruptured with a force beyond any recorded blast. A fiery orb hurtled through the cold air above the Tunguska River basin, detonating some kilometers above the ground. In a single instant, it flattened roughly 80 million trees across 800 square miles.
Very high wind blowing radially outward from the center, from ground zero. And so that's the direction that the trees blow down.
The shockwave rattling roofs and shattering windows hundreds of miles away. Yet no crater marked the spot. No metal shards lay buried in the earth. For decades, the Russian Empire barely mentioned the event, and early Soviet leaders delayed proper field studies until 1927. When scientists finally trudged into the scorched taiga, they found trees felled in a dramatic starburst pattern, branches pointing outward like spokes on a wheel, pointing to a mid-air explosion? Speculation ran wild. A comet fragment, an asteroid, even whispers of a natural nuclear blast.
Millions of pine trees, larches, and birches are destroyed by the pressure wave and the fires.
But once official research under the Academy of Sciences quickly silenced anything beyond a simple rock from space. Cold War secrecy wrapped the region in further mystery. Declassified documents hint that military experts studied unusual energy readings, hunting ways to harness or weaponize the power behind that Siberian sky bomb. Yet when the USSR fell, teams returned to confirm only an airburst, still finding no reliable debris. Modern expeditions deploy tree ring analysis and snow pit sampling, but speak only of shock waves and blast patterns. Number 1. Ancient road beneath the waves. Just off the coast of Bimini Island, turquoise waters ripple over a half-mile stretch of rectangular limestone blocks. Discovered by diver Robert Angove in 1968, this road plunges gently into the sea, its perfectly shaped slabs sparking claims of a sunken highway to a lost world. Some fans of the Atlantis legend seized on a psychic's earlier prediction. While museums and universities initially sent eager experts, geologists later argued the stones were natural beach rock, cracked by tides into neat rectangles. Yet their own field reports admitted the patterns seemed too uniform for mere chance. Radiocarbon tests in the 1970s dated marine deposits on the blocks to about 3,500 years ago, centuries before the earliest known Bahamian settlements. If man-made, it points to an undocumented civilization with coastal engineering skills lost to rising seas. Despite the intrigue, serious study dried up. Universities quietly withdrew funding, and National Geographic turned away. Academic journals dodged papers that hinted at intentional design, fearing career-ending association with fringe theories. In research circles, Bimini Road became shorthand for a discovery not tidy enough to fit standard history.
The Bimini Road has inspired fascination since the 1960s.
But similar submerged structures, from the coasts of Japan to the Mediterranean, show ancient people did build elaborate waterfront installations. Could these blocks be the remains of a stone causeway linking islands now 2 fathoms beneath the waves? Or did shifting currents carve out a natural mosaic that merely tricks the eye? Bimini's limestone puzzle lies undisturbed, awaiting fresh dives and open minds. As sea levels continue to rise, it stands as a silent warning. When scholars close ranks, genuine wonders can slip beneath the tide, lost to convention and caution.